Hello and welcome to The Art Of, our regular in-depth look at different aspects of the beautiful game. Today we're going to be getting technical in between the lines and admiring some of the finest finishes and footwork the Premier League has ever seen as we delve into the art of the number 10.
Rooney! Oh, wonderful! What a player! Glorious goal! Dennis Bergkamp is in. Brilliant. It's Sheringham! It's class all the way. Torre de Silva. Beautiful strike. Oh, fantastic. Ozil! That is brilliant. Ready! A true footballing genius. And Dennis Bergkamp! What a fabulous goal, fit to win any game.
Hazard, creative, and running at Koscielny.
Hazard's gone all the way and scored a beautiful, beautiful goal.
And I'm joined in the studio by the Tottenham legend, former England manager, part-time rock star, one of the greatest football brains that there is, Mr. Glenn Hoddle. And we're going to see what's inside that wonderful head of yours, Glenn, because every former player and pundit I speak to praises you so much about your tactical look at the game. And look, we're talking to one of the pioneers of the 10 role, aren't we? I mean, is that fair to say, particularly in this country, in the UK?
Maybe. Back in our day, there wasn't the number 10, Will. That was the problem. There wasn't really a fixed position for it. It was one of those positions that I didn't think the English coaches trusted. They didn't really trust that creative player. Everything was more of a 4-4-2. I probably only played for England once in the number 10 position. Against Hungary, just in behind two strikers. And I think for one season really at Tottenham before I went to Monaco, I played as a number 10 just behind Clive Allen and had the freedom to go and play where I felt I should have played all my career really. So that was always a bit frustrating for me. But as we just saw those clips, the number 10 is the most beautiful and the most artistic creator on a football pitch. It's got to be said. And when you see them clips, and we can go back further, you know, to Maradona and Pelé and all them players, they just roll off the tongue. You would pay money. You'd pay money to go and watch them players. And I think that's a number 10 on the sort of entertainment side of football. You've got to be a winner, of course you have. Those guys we've just seen and we're going to be seeing now, they're all winners. But you would actually I would pay money now to go and watch certain players in the game today, whereas a lot of them I wouldn't, if I'm honest. But it's normally the number 10 position that wasn't looked at as the most important position in this country for so long, the way we played.
Where did it emerge from then? Because you said when you went to Monaco, they were doing that every week, playing a 10, weren't they? In France and Germany and Spain.
And that's what I looked at. I looked at every World Cup, every European Championships, every European Games when we played against opposition. They had a number 10 position. And you know what? Until I went to France, it was the most important position on the pitch. Your teammates knew that. The manager expected that. Even the media and the fans knew that there was a number 10 role. And that was the most important. Platini in France is a perfect example. You know, Zidane in France, they had them. And this is something that I looked at as a player, young player particularly, and it did frustrate me that there was no real play. Even at Tottenham, I played on the right side of a diamond all my life, really. Ricky Villa ended up playing behind the front two, Archibald and Crooks, because of he couldn't defend. You know, I weren't a great defender, but Ricky was even worse than me. So he got put in the 10 position where he could be protected.
Did you love it? Did you come alive in the 10 later in his first career then?
Yeah, I loved that time. I played that one season at Tottenham. Clive Allen scored 49 goals that year. He had Chrissy Waddle out there, me just as the 10. He had Ozzy and Paul Allen just behind, and Tony Galvin or Stevie Hodger. We had a lovely balance in midfield behind one striker then, before now, because a lot of teams play obviously with one striker. But I loved playing that position. And I got to say, as soon as I went to Monaco, there was that position was given to me. Arsene Wenger, I was working with, which was wonderful, said to me, it took 45 minutes for him to tell me, you're coming back too deep, Glenn. And it was a pre-season game. And it was like music to my ears. He said, no, we want you as the number 10. When we win the ball, we'll get you the ball. You can defend a lot higher up the pitch and do your business and hurt the opposition. That player has to hurt the opposition, whether it's dribbling, getting in the box off the ball, or being a goal scorer and creating things for other, painting pictures for other people, as I call it. And you know what? It was just an absolute pleasure to play in that position. I loved every minute of it.
And we're going to get stuck in over the next hour to what it means to be a great 10 and what attributes you need and so on. Look, pre-Premier League, when you were playing 10 in those late Spurs days, but let's have a look at you causing some damage, Glenn, starting with a 3-1 win over Oxford United. Remember this day? This was April 1980.
Yeah.
You walked through the whole team.
This was my last goal for Tottenham, I was leaving to go to Monaco, and this is my last I think it was my last goal at White Hart Lane. Yeah, I managed to just get through, and personally, it was a lovely way to just kiss goodbye to the Tottenham fans. I always look back on it emotionally, and it was a lovely feeling. But that was, I was in that position. There was a cross went in, and I was just allowed in that position. So you're allowed to not cheat. It's not cheating. If your manager wants you to defend, you've got to defend higher up the pitch. But there's times when you just think, right, where's that ball going to drop? I'll just pull into little positions where you become free and no one can pick you up, and that was a prime example. Yeah,
you scored the winner against Nottingham Forest, 1979, White Hart Lane.
Yeah.
So analyse the 10 role in this goal for us.
Well, this was a little bit different because although Tottenham were a very technical team, this didn't touch the floor. It came from the goalkeeper, but I was arriving in the box. That's where you're in that little position. I was out a little bit wide on the right, and I just arrived in the box at the very right moment. And that's what you have to do as well as a 10. You have to arrive in that penalty area, in and around the penalty area, and get your goals from there. You're never going to be someone that's going to be really tapping them in from 6 yards, because that's not your job. That's going to be your main finisher, your strikers. But you have to arrive in the penalty area, and that one fell beautifully for me on my right foot to volley.
Look, you scored a classic volley against Manchester United. We're not going to see that one, but a goal against Manchester United around the same sort of time as well. I know a lot of Tottenham fans remember this one. And edge of the box.
This is an example of a number 10 arriving in and around the D. This is where I was positioned. I'd come onto it late. So you let the first phase of attackers go in, you let the defenders go in and defend, and I'm screaming at Ricky Villa to cut it back, and he cuts it back beautifully, and then, you just have the side foot. Sometimes you don't have to blast the football. It's coming at you. You use the pace of the ball, but that's a number 10 position where you arrive, letting everyone go in first. You arrive late.
Yeah, we'll have another look at this. Worth another look, isn't it? But it's the timing, yeah? This key moment here before Villa sees you.
You see all the United players going in to defend, and he just pulls it back beautifully. Lovely weight of pass, and I just stroked it, really. You don't have to, you don't have to find the power, really. If the ball's coming back at you, it's about getting the technique right and just stroking the ball wide of the keeper.
Yeah. So when we talk about international greats, Glenn, who played in that number 10 position, who's the first one for Mr. Hodley springs to mind?
Maradona. I know Pelé, you're going back way Pelé, but Maradona, and in the modern game you've got so many. Zico and Maradona were special players for me. South Americans, which they had number 10s for many years, always actually, and probably the European teams copied it a little bit as we went through, but those were the real genuine number 10s, Maradonas and your Pelés, that as a kid being brought up. In Europe, you've got to say people like Platini, more modern day Zidane, but for me, Cruyff was although he wore the 14, because I think that was a superstition, he was a player that the team was built round, and this is what the number 10s on the continent, teams were built round the number 10. Cruyff was an incredible footballer. What Cruyff had was this ability to run the game from that position. So they were the real number 10s to me. Zico was a fabulous player. Should have probably done, in 82 they had a wonderful Brazil side, should have won the World Cup, didn't, and probably should have played for a better team in Italy as well. But for me, when I see a number 10, you could learn so much from him.
Yeah, and look, Maradona was the first name that you said, and obviously, you were playing at similar times, so could you sense and feel the hype of what was happening, particularly when he was at Napoli?
Oh yeah, I mean, at Napoli he was untouchable, unplayable. I think he was set above everyone everyone else that's ever played at football on the planet, to be honest. I watched him very closely. I was in Monaco at the time. We nearly crossed over. I nearly went to Napoli a year before he went. So whether we'd have ever played together.
Imagine
we played together in
Hoddle and Maradona,
yeah,
yes, please.
We actually played at White Hart Lane together in Ozzy's testimonial, which was a fantastic opportunity. But for me, he was just an absolute genius.
Yeah.
And but he was a bit more than just a number 10. He was a striker that really, a little bit like the modern day Messi, go where you want. You're a number 10, but go where you want. You can go anywhere on the football pitch to just get the ball and change the game, and that's what Maradona and the great players had.
And Messi 30 years before Messi.
And Messi was for me, Argentinian again as well.
Yeah.
Amazing, really, how close they are. Left-footed, but he's the one as well. You go and play anywhere. Just get him the ball. Give the ball to him. Whether he would go wide left, wide right, in behind, up front. Just let him have the ball, and that's what the number 10s are about.
Yeah.
Plenty of the ball.
Yeah, a little bit later than Maradona, but obviously Roberto Baggio, Alessandro Del Piero, doing what they did in Serie A, 6 league titles, and again, different to Maradona.
Different style. That's the difference, Will. For me, there's different styles of the 10. There's semi-striker 10s, you know, like a Baggio is just more of a striker coming off, and the likes of Teddy Sheringham, maybe, if you like, and your Bergkamps and your Zolas, who we'll look at a bit later. Those sort of players, they're then you've got a Platini and a Cruyff, who you think, well, actually, Zidane, they're more sort of midfield creators that play in the 10. The one thing the 10 has to do, he has to be a creator and he has to score goals to be a real, genuine number 10. And all them players we're talking about were. And then I think there's a third element to it as well, really, in many ways, is there's like what I call a box number 10. Somebody that's not really the creator, and that's coming maybe a bit more into the modern game, just somebody that gets into the box, waits for holes to arrive, and arrives in the penalty area and scores goals.
Out of those names, and we're just flashing, I could just spend the next 45 minutes just throwing names at you. Could Ronaldinho, Iniesta, Zidane, you know, all completely different types, but the most traditional 10 out of those names that you've mentioned in terms of the international greats would be, when it sort of springs to mind, the first name you said was a Maradona. But he's so unorthodox, isn't he? He
was a one-off, he was a one-off. I think Zidane in the modern game, in the modernish game, I think Zidane would be one that I would say. He's an artist as well on the football pitch, Zidane. Again, you go and watch, you pay money to go and watch him play. You know, there's so many, isn't there? Ronaldinho at his very best. But it's a wonderful...
Where does Pelé fit into this?
Well, Pelé, of course, was the genuine, the first number 10. And the Brazilians played with that.
Greatest player of all time?
I can't go further than I think technically Maradona was the best technical I've ever seen. Some of the goals that he scored and whatever, but I didn't really see enough. I've seen Pelé in clips on television, didn't see him play. Obviously played with Maradona and played against him in the Hand of God goal and the magical goal that he scored against in the Azteca in '86. But so for me, that's why I've always gone towards Maradona, really.
Right, now we've examined some of the international greats of the position. Let's hear what a few of our current Premier League players think makes an ideal number 10.
Making assists, making good passes, change games and everything, and of course just quality of an offensive players, like scoring goals, set pieces.
Technically good with the ball and good eyes for the right pass.
Intelligence, technique, cleverness, being able to find spaces, especially when you're in that pocket.
Technical ability, I would say vision, vision, spatial awareness.
Good number 10, I'd say playing on a half turn mainly. Me being a striker, I love when a player in front of me just gets on a half turn and slips me on or whatever. So I think, especially playing on a half turn and just vision really.
I think someone who can obviously read the game, who's in between the lines, who doesn't have to be fast in particular, but who can just play between the lines and is obviously a good passer as well.
Special technique that you have a feeling he's not only a football player, he's dancing with the ball like Ronaldinho and everything.
Knowing what's around you, having the awareness to know what to do and having that quality. I feel like the 10's an important position. It's having that quality, being able to do something, change the game. And I'd say like the top 10s in the Prem, you've got these David Silva, people like that, they're the ones that had all of that.
Being smart, you've got to be really smart in that position, And yeah, I would say the main thing would probably be technical ability and vision.
So making space for yourself, creating space, vision, making things happen in the game. What would Glenn's sort of key points to being a 10, attribute-wise, technique-wise, be?
The guys have covered a lot of it, most of it. The number one asset for me is your total awareness. You've got to be, a 10 will see things on a football pitch nobody else sees. So the vision and the awareness of knowing where you are compared to where your defenders are, where you're first and foremost, and then where your teammates are. So you have to have that 360 degrees awareness. And that's when somebody was saying on the half turn, well, that's a part of the 360 degrees. So that you can, and technically then you have to, if you can be off 2 feet, that's even better. Most of the 10s are quite 2-footed. You know, so they're playing in the 360 degrees ratio. So you can pick out, you know, they'll do things where people go, how did he do that? You know, when we see these players, how did he see that pass, let alone make that pass? And they're the things that people love to see on a football game. They're the things that stand out, the special things. You've got to have that, you know, that ability, that vision and that confidence to do it. You have to be strong-minded. People hadn't said about the mind, because if you're the most, and abroad it was the most important position, the onus, the pressure was on you to perform. Now don't forget,
you're the quarterback, aren't you? You know,
you're the quarterback in a way, yeah. But also, don't forget, not so much nowadays, you were man-marked. The number 10 was man-marked. So somebody could follow you, pull your shirt a couple of times, kick you, and not get booked. Whereas now, in this day, in this era, you can't do that. So the space is there a little bit. In English football, the spaces were there for players to go into the number 10 positions. Abroad, it was different. The hardest player, the toughest defender, would be put up against you. That's why Maradona, for me, goes above everyone else. Because sometimes they had to put 2 men on him and they couldn't get near him. So that just shows you how important, how difficult that is. What the guys have just said in that VT there, multitude of things: awareness, first touch, you know, half turn, all them things. There's 6 or 7 things that are massive. You don't ask a fullback or a centre back to do that, do you? Even a striker, sometimes you wait in that box and score the goals. But the number 10 has to have an array of so much talent and awareness about them, as well as in the modern day, fit into the defensive side a little bit as well. And this is why I get back to how we distrusted that sort of player many, many moons ago, from the 70s right the way through to the 80s. We actually got stuck playing 4-4-2 for so long that put us behind lots of these teams.
We talked about international greats as a 10, but someone that you worked with, and Sir Alex Ferguson had the pleasure of working with, a player that had wing mirrors on, basically, was Paul Scholes. And you talk about that 360 degree vision, and you played him as the 10 when you were England manager.
We had a system that you know, having experienced that as a player, playing against it, I loved the number 10, even down to when I went into management at Swindon and Chelsea. I bought Gavin Peacock at Chelsea, and little Martin Ling played it for me. So when I went to England, I was going to, where's my number 10? And Paul Scholes was absolutely ideal, because he was a half striker, half midfield player. So he actually was perfect to play that role. And he proved that, because he could play up front as a second striker, and in the end he played as a deep line midfield player at the end of his career. But when he was in his pomp, he had this cleverness, as you say, the wing mirrors, the awareness. He could slide people in, could score goals. That's the assets. You've got to be a goal scorer. To have that position deemed upon you, you've got to be a scorer of goals, and you've got to create. And Paul had that in abundance.
How do you coach a 10 with talent like that? I mean, obviously he was being coached by Sir Alex and the Manchester United coaches, and he sort of came in and you sprinkled bits on top of him as well.
You know what? 10's probably, you're either a 10 or you're not. It's very difficult to coach a 10. What you might give them, you might assess a couple of games where you might tell them, oh, you can pick up little spaces better than you have done in the last couple of games, but you're not really going to be able to coach them as such. You know, there's little reminders of positions and things. When the ball goes wide, we do need you on the edge of the box. Whoever it is, you know, you do need to get in the box at times. You may be holding out a little bit. There's little things like that, but you actually don't. They're natural players. The 10s are 10s because they play the game virtually off the cuff, like nobody else does on the football pitch. And this is where it's changed, thankfully, over the years. You know, we've got now in England we've got a little bit more of open-mindedness about these type of players. We never used to trust them, but they're the ones that they're the ones with the natural talent.
If only we'd seen it earlier, England would have won more World Cups, Glenn, from 66,
I think we could have done. But this is what listen, Germans were the ones that lost in 66, and they reinvented themselves in 70. And at the end of the day, they dictated everything through the 70s. What did we do in the 70s? We didn't qualify for any tournaments.
Good old 4-4-2 long ball.
4-4-2, and we got stuck that way. We were lazy in our coaching for many, many years, and we suffered for it. Thankfully, it all changed, and the academies started to change the way that we brought these kids through, and we've got a ton of them now. Got loads of them, which we'll come to later. But you know, it's one of those scenarios we needed to change them when they were 8, 9, 10 years of age.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right, time for a short break. When we come back, we are going to be analysing the different types of number 10s that are around and that we've seen during the Premier League era. And Glenn will let us know who he thinks embodies the best of each of those. Welcome back to The Art of the Number 10 with the great man, Mr. Glenn Hoddle. And we're going to split what a number 10 is into 3 categories, Glenn, aren't we? And the first one being the striker dropping in as a 10. So just explain, you've got the tactics board out, what you mean by that.
Got the board here, yeah. I mean, as I said before, there's different styles of 10s. This is a 10 that would go and get marked and drop in. So you drop into the spaces from a position where you're a striker, that if the ball does go over the top, you're happy to do that. You're happy to sink in with your partner if your partner's up there with you, or one just in behind. But it's about coming off into these spaces, into these positions, when the ball's in different positions here. So you're finding these holes, you're drifting in if it's the other way around on the other side of the pitch, you go and get marked and you drift off the side of so you're coming off on an angle. What's important here as well is when the ball's on the right hand side, for instance here as an example, if you come off on the side of the ball, the defender will come in behind you and mark you very tightly. But the beauty of coming off as a number 10 is go and get marked, come off on the opposite side of the pitch. When a ball is being played in and it's coming across, now it ball comes into there, this defender won't come and mark you. And if he does, he'll come late, and if he does, he leaves a massive hole there. So at the end of the day, you win both ways round. Now, we had to do that a little bit, although he's not number 10, with Michael Owen. When I had Shearer and Michael Owen up front, I needed some players to drop into them spells, into them little spaces, and we did it with Michael Owen, and he did it brilliantly, particularly in that goal against Argentina. It was a great example of that, where he just drops into this position. I think it's David Beckham on the right hand side, and we worked at that, and then the rest is history. He goes on that run. But that's such an important position, whether you're playing with 2 strikers, one of them dropping in, and Teddy Sheringham, for instance, was an absolute master at that. He really was, and a lot of people learnt from Teddy playing in that position.
You picked out some examples, Glenn, haven't you, from Teddy Sheringham? Should we have a look at those and talk us through some of these?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, straight away you'll see here he's pinning people down here, but he's a linker in and around the D. That's him, but this is where he's at his very, very best for me. Look, the position he's in there now, he's just in space in behind. What a beautiful little clip. Number 10 always needs pictures ahead of you. You always need movement ahead of you if you've got that ability. Here's a little 1-2 here, little Scholesy. Clever players that see, you know, what we were talking about, the awareness. But again, he's come off his defenders there, and now he's prepared to get in and around the edge of the D, in and around the box. And that's what you need from your 10. You know, again, he's come off. There's no one marking him. He's already got in that position. Before that move happens, Will, he's already had a look over his shoulder. He's looked at where the defenders are, and he's got himself in the space. He knows where he is, where he can turn and hit his shot. And that's what a really good 10, especially if you're a striker 10 coming off, needs that 360 degrees example that I was talking about.
And how nice was that for you? Because obviously you coached Teddy with England, but with Spurs as well, and he was a master at that.
Oh, he was somebody that youngsters could teach that, and Teddy did that particularly well, coming off when he was on the opposite side of the ball. And everyone used to say, How does he get his space? It was quite simple, really. But if you come off on the side of the ball as a number 10, you're going to get marked. He used to drift into areas thinking you're not involved, and suddenly one pass, two passes, and Teddy would be in space.
Yeah.
And I think the likes of other players, younger players coming through, learnt a lot from that.
So strong in the air, Teddy Sheringham, but so strong on the ground. That sort of centre of gravity, using his backside to just get out of positions and hold up play is so important, isn't it?
Well, he had a bit of both. That's where he was the striker come number 10, drifting in there. He had that ability to hold the ball up, as we saw in the first clip there. And also, for me, great header of the ball. And he would arrive in the penalty area. Again, let the first phase of defence, let the first phase of attack go in, and Teddy would then arrive in that penalty spot area and get right in there and score goals with his head as well as his left and right foot. He was a two-footed player as well. So he had everything. He had everything to play the number 10 role.
So type 2, in terms of what makes a number 10, creative midfielders with an eye for goal. Let's go back to the tactics board. Explain this one for us.
Yeah, I mean, this one is a little bit deeper. I mean, you would say your Platinis would be that sort of player years ago, Cruyff, and the ones we've got nowadays playing this position just in front of two defenders there, and they would look to play what I call across the arc. So you'd allow them to play right across the arc there, in behind, and make sure they're on the outsides. Sometimes, you know, Will, the worst place to go and play is in the number 10 position. You get picked up. So what you would do is you would go and get marked out on a winger, as a winger, and as a fullback, and drift in. So you're always on the shoulder of the last deep defender in midfield. So again, you'd be out here if the ball's. You're allowing him to play across what I call the arc, and go and get marked at times and come off. But realistically, it's a bit deeper, and then. What you'll do, you'll find this player will be able to hit passes. He'll hurt you from a deeper position. With the example of Teddy was higher up the pitch. This lad, whoever it is, and there's different styles, can come deep, get turned, play a ball across the field, and then arrive in the penalty area later. He's more of a midfield creator. Somebody that they can pass the ball into. Where's the ball? We can pass the ball into him into feet, and he'll get turned. And whether he slides people in and creates, or he runs at people. You know, if you've got ability like Hazard had that ability in that position to run at people. So that is a very, very shrewd player that can go and just pick up positions all the way across the pitch and be what I call a quarterback. That's more of a quarterback. Where everything goes through.
Dennis Bergkamp, a good example.
Bergkamp was like that. Zola was like that. And Platini definitely going back was that sort of player, and Cruyff. But Dennis was a superb player. Look, the vision, look at that for a pass, change of play. And Vieira doesn't have to touch the ball. It's perfect. The weight of pass, a one touch, look at that. Players don't need to take it to that, but that's what Dennis had. He arrived in the penalty enders into that little pocket, and this goal, well, he sets the pass up, like I've just said, coming in a deep position like a quarterback, plays the ball out wide. Number 10, you always think, like, you see how he pushed the defender off, the strength that he showed, not only mentally to get in the box, but physically. You have to look after yourself in that position. Dennis was one that could look after himself, believe me.
That goal against Newcastle, I mean, it's one of the greatest Premier League goals of all time, isn't it?
Incredible.
But the fact that he sets it up, as you say, on the halfway line just makes it even better.
Exactly. I mean, you play a pass like that, and sometimes you're happy just to make the pass. A lot of players would be happy. Not Dennis. He's gone in the box, and the sublime bit of skill was incredible in the finish.
An example of that, then, and interesting that you explained it with the arc, would probably be a Gianfranco Zola.
Yeah, a lot of them players with Maradona as a youngster coming through, so he saw. But this is him in the box. He was somebody so small, it was brave on the ball to get in the penalty area. Once you faced up against he had you, because his trickery and his movement of the ball and the feet. He's such a quick thinker. It was quite incredible. Look there, he shifted the ball so quickly, and he's got the techniques to finish. Here you see him. Look, he's running in behind defenders, and that is just, again, sublime. You cannot coach that. That is just somebody, look at a big smile, enjoying the game, and probably thousands of people watching that number 10 do his business.
It helps when your number 10 smiles as well, because you should be enjoying it, doesn't it? Because I know you said at the top of the show that maybe not necessarily the most fashionable position, because kids want to play striker, don't they? And they want to score their goals. But it's sort of fashionable with those who have the talent, because you need the skill to be able to play. And then Zola was a fine example. But he could overlap in a lot of these categories, couldn't he?
He could. He had a bit of everything, you know, as we've just shown there. at times he could come deep and hit 40, 60, 50-yard passes over the back of defenders, you know, and then he could dribble. He could, a little bit like, had a bit of hazard in him, where you get turned in that little pocket in that 10 position and run at people and shift people, and he put people off balance, defenders off balance.
Yeah.
He had such good balance, he put them off balance, and then suddenly he could slide someone in or put it in the top corner.
Yeah.
He was an artist.
What are your memories then of that arc? Because the way you explained it, you know, just drifting out wide, you create the space, you come into it. I mean, that was a trick of yours at Spurs at White Hart Lane many occasion, wasn't it?
Yeah, I found that you had to be astute enough to pick them positions up. And sometimes, as I said, the last place you want to be is in that number 10 position. We all think of number 10 in behind the striker, in behind two strikers, maybe back in the day. But you needed to arrive in that position rather than stand in that position. And I think that's where you can help as a
9 can stand in the position, a 10 can't, yeah?
Exactly, because he'll occupy a couple of defenders. Whereas I think sometimes, you know, youngsters, you can teach them to maybe, they've got the talent to be a number 10, but they might need a bit of guidance, not coaching as such, a bit of guidance on where to drift in and drift into them positions at the right time. Football's all about being in a good position or a bad position related to the football. Where the football is on the football pitch, you have to be in the right position, whether you're a defender or certainly a number 10. And you're forever having to think about what if that I get that ball in that position, what if I drift into those positions and I receive the ball, then I can do my business. So you're always thinking 2 or 3 passes ahead of the game. That is another thing that a good number 10 has to have. That vision is one thing. We talk about vision as when the ball's at his feet and what he sees, but he's Teddy Sheringham, Zola, Bergkamp, all them players we've just shown, they are 2 or 3 passes ahead.
The snooker players, aren't
getting in their positions to then go and hurt the opposition.
Yeah. So the third type then is the box threat, as you call it, number 10, who arrives from deeper. So when we look at the pitch, explain what you mean by that, Glenn.
Well, that would be 9 times out of 10. It's when the ball's progressed up the pitch and it's in a little bit of a wider position, and you're looking and you're waiting. Dele Alli had that gift at his very best a few seasons ago, where your striker makes movement and you're looking then to hit the box. What I call, they hit the box off the ball. They're not going to be the ones that create. They're not going to be the ones that run and dribble and go past people. They're waiting for holes to develop, and then they get into that penalty area and they're a finisher. They finish. So that's a number 10 that is slightly different, not as creative maybe, but as a effective, and probably might actually score a lot of goals in that position. You're going back. There's a crossover, you know, Will, between some 8s that are like that.
Yeah.
De Bruyne was an 8 and a 10.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, you know, Dele Alli definitely at his pomp for Tottenham was just in behind Harry Kane, and he made them lovely runs, and he played again just in round the D at times. That's where you had to pick up them positions in this sort of area around here, and eventually a lot of his goals were waiting for them holes and making those timed runs. You have to time it right. If you go in too early, at times when he was younger, he went in too early. The ball wasn't ready to come. Then if you're too late, you're going to miss your opportunity. So it's very interesting. That's a different style of number 10, getting and timing it to relate it to when the ball's going to be crossed or played in to those positions.
And Exhibit A, as you said, was Dele Alli in his...
He had a freedom in his mind. Look, come off in that position. Wasn't in that position. Came off a marker to come in there and slide Son in. And then when the ball's out wide here, he's in the box. This is a wonderful. This is probably his best goal I've seen him. He's in that position again. It's amazing how many times you see that position where the defenders are all gone in and attackers. This is him. This is where I think he's at his best, making those runs in behind a striker, getting into that, and puts in a wonderful strike. This is him at his very best. What a great run, what a great ball that was. But it was waiting for those moments where defenders are just caught out of position and there's a space and a hole there to go into.
Yeah, and it's so aggressive, isn't it? You say there, he was looking for that overlap, but came in.
Yeah.
It's always front foot. You're always looking to push. You can only do that in a certain type of team, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's no good having a number. This is why I found it hard. There was no position for me as a number 10, because when the ball's played long, when the ball goes from back to front, which it did a lot in the 80s, it was very difficult to play in those positions. A good number 10 in a good team that plays good football, attractive, you know, shorter passes maybe, technical players behind him as well, to find you. It's all right being a number 10 in good positions. If you don't get the ball, you're not going to do the business. You're not going to hurt the opposition.
Yeah.
So you've got to be in a team that actually can feed the number 10. But as I say, it's changed. It's a bit easier for the 10s now.
Yeah.
Your Messi's compared to your Maradonas. Maradona had somebody following him, kicking him. And they could kick him back in the day.
Yeah.
Messi and your Ronaldos and the modern day player, they don't have that anymore. Thankfully, because it's helped the game. It's a creative game. So these guys have got the freedom of the park.
Yeah, perfect. Right, that's all we've got time for in part 2. But join us after the break as we look at the development of the modern day number 10 and also what the future might look like for that position. See you in 3 minutes. Welcome back to The Art Of. We're talking, of course, about the number 10 with Glenn Hoddle in the studio with me. So we're talking about the modern number 10 now. And how, Glenn, do you think that role has evolved over the last decade?
It has changed a little bit in the modern day. The 10s play on the wide berth a little bit, and then they come inside, and it's now the fullbacks, whether it's wing backs or whether it's in a back four, the left and right back. They're the ones that give you the width and the height in most teams nowadays. So it's that little position that they're having to defend, but they're having to then come in those little what are called pockets. Sometimes nowadays there's 2 number 10s. Man City have more than 2, by the way. But at the end of the day, that's the little number 10s that we're talking about, really. And I think it's interesting that we've got a batch of these coming through in England now. And I think it was because back when they were probably 8, 9, 10, a few years back now, probably 12 years ago, we changed the academies. We changed the way that we brought these kids up. We had 2 bigger pitches, less touches of the ball, and now we suddenly changed it. Went a little bit more like the continental side teams and the template for them, and they have more touches of the ball, smaller pitches. So instead of getting
smaller people, I mean, look, you're a big guy, Glenn.
Exactly.
I know Maradona wasn't, but you know, the 10s now could be quite diminutive figures, can't they?
Well, why not? The pitches are so good now. Back in the day, it was when the pitches were poor that you had to have an athlete. Strong, big 6-footers were better if they were technically good. You had the strength as well. Nowadays, you don't need that. You know, the lower gravity you are, the better, the quicker footed you are, because the pitches are beautiful, and the rules have changed. You can't be touched now hardly as a creative player. But these guys that we had in England have changed the way, when they were 8, 9, 10, the way they were coached, the way we brought them up. What's happened? They're now 21, 22. They're the ones that are coming through, like your Fodens and your Madisons and your Mounts. Players like this, technically gifted now, that we changed. And thank God we did change way back then. And it's the fruits of that is coming through now in the English game.
And credit to Frank Lampard for giving Mason Mount a go, because, you know, he had him at Derby on loan, didn't he? And then gave him that chance in the...
What does he do? That's just the astuteness of a number 10. Not only that pass, but he's a Stratton.
I'd love to have a stepometer on Mason Mount, because he puts in his miles, doesn't he?
Well, he does. He works as well. And I think that's the modern day 10. They always work. You had to work, but you had to work maybe higher up the pitch.
It's those little steps, though, isn't it? Everywhere. It's not necessarily the big strides.
No, he's working all the time, defensively for his team as well. He understands. These guys understand the defensive side of the game as well. Whereas maybe back in the day, it was, if you're a half, like we spoke about, half striker coming off, you didn't have to worry too much about the defensive side.
Yeah, and like we talked earlier about being in a front foot team. You know, Chelsea have been an aggressive team. It's maybe easier to be a 10 in a Chelsea team than it is for Leicester. So, I mean, credit to someone like James Maddison, who has been ripping up trees in that position.
I love this fella. I think if he was playing, no disrespect to Leicester, look at that for a pass. Look at that for a pass. I mean, if this kid can't get in the England team, we must have a very good England team. Because he's a talent. And you've got to have that in your locker, Most of them actually have, when you think about them all the way through. You know, again, I'll go back to Maradona. So I think if you watch his free kicks, they're unreal. But all the number 10s really have got that in their locker, which we didn't touch on earlier, but it just came up there with Maddison. It's a beautiful one.
Well, there you go. That's another show, isn't it? Goats. The Goats 10. That's a whole different ball game. So, like Phil Foden, someone else that you're hugely impressed with the whole time that he's been in the Premier League under Pep Guardiola, who again brought him through the academy and gave him his chance.
He did, and he was patient with him. Pep was fantastically patient. Again, number 10 position that we get. He has to go a little bit wider in this City team, because City have got probably 3 or 4 number 10s at times. But this kid's got ability. Again, he's happy to be wide. He's happy to come in these. So he's got that in his locker, that little 6-yard finish, as well as like his runs off the ball are as good as anyone. Actually, he's a clever player. He knows where to pick up. For me, he's got all this for City. For me, I think he can play in the number 10 position for England. I think the arc that I'm talking about, he can certainly play wide. He knows how to play left and right. I think if you give him that licence to play across the arc, he gets in the box. He ticks every single box for me, Foden.
Yeah.
And I just hope that he can do that and be given the chance at England level to produce what we're seeing for City.
So how does the phrase false 9 fit into this equation? Because I remember a game where he was so dominant, Phil Foden, at Anfield, and Manchester City won at Liverpool, but afterwards Pep Guardiola said, he doesn't quite know how to play there yet, he'll learn. If that's someone who doesn't know how to play there yet, he's got a very bright future, hasn't he, when he's in his 30s?
I remember that game because he did show so much advanced astuteness, really, to play that role. Pep was probably looking at where he can take it. Perfection in many ways.
So that's a number 10 without a 9?
Without a 9.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where, if you've not got a 9, that's where Pep was clever. Other clubs have tried it. They're nowhere near as good as City at doing it, where you end up with 2 or 3. Maybe 2 or 3 number 10s. So they're not really number 9s. They all like to come and get the ball to feet. They prefer probably to have a number 9, which now City have got in Haaland. But Kane does that for England. He can do that, and I think that you need someone to hit. They need that striker ahead of them, in my opinion, to have the balance of it right. And now you're seeing what Haaland's given Man City another dimension. So I think, for England and from a lot of teams, Maddison, we talk about, he had Vardy at his best when they were at their very best, the pair of them. And Dele Alli and Kane had that. Mount had the centre forwards he's worked with at Chelsea, a lot of top quality. And I think that's what you need. That's when it's working at its very, very best, when you're seeing the pictures and you've got somebody that can hit those pictures and hit that movement that's been given them. And I think Foden can do that.
So what needs to happen for Foden to be that 10 then, to unlock this future England success that you can see in your crystal ball?
He needs to be given that position. He needs to be
just
given
simple as play him there.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we don't do in England that they do abroad. That we don't make a special player. We're scared to, at a young age, identify. Rooney would have been one. As good as Rooney was for England and what, but he needed maybe, and some certain players need to be identified. They're going to be special players. Make them special. Make them think special. Let them go to games with the England manager at a weekend when they're injured and talk and understand the game and bring them on. And I think Foden was one of them. I saw him at 17 and said the kid's more South American than the South Americans he was playing against. But what he had as well, he had this very clever mind. But he's now playing at the perfect club as well. So for me, Foden is one in 4 or 5 years' time, could be, if he's given the reins, could be one of the best players in the world.
So quick fire questions for you.
Oh dear.
Some of them could be quick fire, some of them could be slower.
Okay.
And before we even get to that, I was going to ask you, because we do at the top of the show, I mentioned the word Messi to you. So what would a Messi be? What would a Salah be? Are they just in brackets of their own because they amalgamate quite a few different positions?
Yeah, your Messis and your Maradonas, what we said, and Salah, they might start out on the wide berth, but they end up centre forwards. They end up in the 10. It's about giving those players the ball. Get them on the ball any which way you can get them on the ball. Even back in the days when Brian Clough used to say, you're not good enough, but give him the ball. He's good enough. He can't tackle, he'll do your tackling for you. That's the balance of a team. A number 10 and a Messi or a Maradona or if you've got a special player, get him the ball. At City, Foden, for me, would get the ball, 150 times in a game, whereas for England, maybe he's getting it 25 times in the progressive areas. So give these players the ball, especially in this day and age. They're not being marked man for man, and that's a challenge to a number 10. I had to face that when I went to Monaco. I'd never done it in England, but it was a challenge, what I wanted. So nowadays, those pockets, they're already there. Sometimes you don't even have to create them for yourself. So that's why this number 10, these positions are so important in the modern game.
And it feels like the numbers have merged, doesn't it? Because when we talk about Harry Kane, everyone calls him a 9.5 now. But Kevin De Bruyne, a name you mentioned earlier. By the way, we haven't even said the words David Silva, which is probably a crime, isn't it, when we're talking about number 10s. Kevin De Bruyne, City fans would say that he can play 8 and 10 in the game in the same 90 minutes.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think City have got 3 or 4 of them. Foden can do that. De Bruyne does it. Bernardo Silva does it. Even they've played Gundogan in that position sometimes when Rodri played. So City have they're a little bit of a one-off team at the moment. England have got a lot of players that can play in players in that. Even Grealish could play in there. Actually, did it a few times for Villa. You've got other styles of players, but for me, Maddison is somebody that I feel would have been in that England team. But so we've got an abundance. Fortunately, we've suddenly got an abundance of these lovely sort of number 10 players, which we didn't have back in the day. We really didn't. Yeah.
And look, do you like it then, just finally before we get to these quick fires, that you have these players that can all play 10, or should it be that specific role that you were in those emerging Spurs days, that quarterback, the way you described it?
Yeah, I think the game has evolved, it's gone on, and I think it's now you can afford to have 2 of them 10s in there from the system that people play, because they're mainly now playing with one up. That's why it was difficult at England at that level. We had Shearer and Owen in the end as my front 2, exciting, but we had to do little work with them to come off because we had to fit Scholesy in behind. So that was a test as a coach to get that balance right. If you get it wrong...
Well, that's where the Argentina goal was born, as we touched on earlier.
Yeah, with Michael, yes, of course. But, to have that much offensive play on the pitch, you have to get the defensive side sorted out. They will chip in, and these modern-day number 10s chip in. They defend.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think Foden would be better played central because he could just lock on to the deeper player for the opponents.
Yeah. Right, let's rattle through a few of these. Okay, first up, what's the most important attribute of a number 10? We touched on loads earlier, but the most?
There's too many. There's not just one, but you've got to have awareness. You've got to have you've got to know where everyone is on the pitch as you receive the ball.
Who, in your opinion, is the best ever number 10, Mr. Hoddle?
Maradona, without a doubt.
Diego Maradona. No hesitation there at all.
Best player that's ever hit the planet, technically, in my opinion. Yeah.
And when Diego Maradona died, a tweet that went out from you, Glenn, a lovely picture of you two together, because you played in a game together as well, didn't you?
We did. Look at the Barnet. That was a wonderful night actually to play with Diego, and it was especially anyone that went to that game. It was a fabulous night. Played, I think, Inter Milan, Tottenham for Aussie's testimonial. Beautiful time.
So, which attribute do you wish that you'd had as a player? You had plenty, but one that you were missing.
I would say, if I could have had Johan Cruyff's turn of pace, he was lightning from a stop position to go in. He was so quick. I would love to have had that up my sleeve.
Which number 10 do you wish you'd played alongside?
Well, I think it's got to be Diego.
Yeah,
it's got to be Diego on that one. Although there's so many that you would love to have played with. Yeah, I've got to say.
Any of the above in the last hour or so.
Yeah.
Most underrated number 10?
Zico, without a doubt.
Brazilian star.
He was out of this world.
Favourite goal from a number 10? Can you think of one that stands out? Is that going to be Maradona again?
I'm going to be really boring now. How can you go... we saw Dennis score some wonderful goals in there. There's just so many goals, isn't there? We've seen Dennis Bergkamp. But Maradona's goal again, I was playing in that game. The pitch was horrible as well. Yeah. Dreadful. But his dribble against England at a World Cup, unbelievable goal.
Best passer, number 10?
That's really tough,
Would it be Scholesy? The man that you coached?
Scholesy was an excellent park, because he ended up playing deep and hitting passes more when he played deep. So I think I'd go for Paul. There's a lot of good ones up there, though.
And then just to finish, is number 10 the hardest position on the pitch? Which I think I know the answer, Glenn.
It's the most important position in the pitch, in my opinion. And it's not as easy as people think, as we've gone through today. It's the most important, and you have to have so many different attributes.
Yeah. Love spending the last hour with you, Glenn. The football brain, loving all of it. There we go, the pioneer of the number 10, Mr. Glenn Hoddle. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.